Laurie Timmermann's career includes 3 years of in-country managerial experience with U.S. food aid and farmer livelihood programs in 4 African countries. Laurie worked with Africare in Washington, D.C. as headquarter program manager and results reporting specialist, assisting with coordinating rural, health, and water project activities in Africa. As an headquarters coordinator with IDE in Denver, she'll explain what IDE is. Laurie supported rural livelihood programming in Asia and Africa. Laurie graduated from Williamette University and earned her master's degree in global development from Columbia University.
Hey, well, welcome everyone. And it's really an honor and privilege to have Eleanor LeCain with us. What we realized is that our very first time that we were in the same halls or conference together was decades ago at a conference called Women of Vision and Action. And I remember Eleanor very clear from that time. And so let me just give you a little introduction to Eleanor. Eleanor LeCain is a speaker, author, and advisor to policymakers who builds on decades of experience in government and campaigns to show practical pathways to building a new America and a new world. Her book, Breakthrough Solutions: How to Improve Your Life and Change the World by Building What Works, has a foreword from the Dalai Lama. Eleanor LeCain has served as the top policy advisor to Marianne Williamson in the 2020 presidential campaign, and she also served as an Assistant Secretary of State for the state of Massachusetts, and she led strategic planning for the Massachusetts state government. So welcome, Eleanor.
Thank you, Laurie. It's great to be here and so nice to see you again.
Well, when I was so excited to learn that you are doing the one of the keynotes presentation for the upcoming Shift Summit. And so I thought maybe here we might get a little bit of advanced preview of some of those brilliant ideas for breakthrough solutions and breakthrough policies. So first, Eleanor, I'd just like to ask you, currently we are in what do you see happening in these times that we're in right now with such a multiplicity of challenges that we're facing?
Exactly right. And for folks who don't know it, the Shift Network is an amazing network of people working towards building a new world. And they're having a fantastic summit and music festival this September 18th to 21st, which is this coming weekend. So yes, I will be speaking there on breakthrough policies to shift our world. And it is exactly answering the question you just asked, which is, you know, what's happening in the world right now? We have so much going on and so many challenges. And we've got the challenges with health and the pandemic. We have challenges in our economy, challenges with the climate crisis, with the west coast of the US is now all in flames. And we've got challenges in our democracy and challenges with racial reckoning. So we've got 5 major challenges happening right now all at the same time. So I know that can be very scary for people if you've gotten sick or know someone with the COVID virus or some other illness, or if you've lost a job or a business, or you live in the West Coast. You know, there's just a lot of people struggling with a lot of challenges right now. But basically, I think that precisely because it is so challenging right now across the board, that it creates an opportunity for bold new approaches that have been needed for a very long time. And I'm actually very hopeful if we can mobilize around a practical plan, a bold plan, that we can actually pivot from breakdown to breakthrough. And because of this challenging time, turn it around to create an America and a world that we want to live in?
Well, one of the crises that you mentioned is our current health crises. So the US has a patchwork of health insurance companies and has the most inefficient medical system in the world based on healthcare spending and outcomes. America spends much more in healthcare per capita than any other nation, 25 to 50% more, and gets less healthcare for it. The current delivery system and the financing structures are unsustainable. There's inequitable access to healthcare. There's increasing number of families who do not have access to adequate care. How can we improve and increase this rate of insurance coverage and access to primary care, streamline the insurance system with less administrative hurdles, and funnel more money towards nutrition and prevention and wellness?
Right, exactly. Well, I would say there's kind of two separate answers to that question. One is absolutely we must have universal health care, and particularly now, everybody needs coverage because anybody could get COVID. And as long as anyone has the COVID virus, anybody could get it. So we really want to make sure that everyone gets good health insurance coverage. So that's kind of number one. And also, I'd say we actually, to deal with the medical cost you're talking about, we need to go upstream. And we need to be addressing the reasons why so many people are getting sick. Because even before COVID, more than half of Americans have some kind of serious chronic health problem like cancer, diabetes, or heart disease. So being sick is the norm in the country. That's more than half our people. So we need to do something to go upstream to say, why are so many of these people getting sick? And what can we do to prevent people from getting sick in the first place? Because once you're hitting all that disease hitting the medical system, it requires doctors and hospitalizations, and that's where you get the costs that you're talking about. But we need to go upstream to keep people healthier in the first place. And an important factor to consider in going upstream is that really 80% of people's health situation is due to what they call social determinants, versus 20% is due to the medical care system of doctors and hospitals. That means that, the social determinants are having a safe place to live, having clean air and clean water, and good nutrition, as you mentioned. Those factors are 4 times more important than medical care itself. So if we do more funding upstream so we can help people stay healthier in the first place, it's going to alleviate the pressure on the tremendous expense of what we're paying downstream in the medical care. And that's part of how other countries can keep their healthcare costs lower. They keep their people healthier. And one of the most important things we do, you mentioned, is proper nutrition. Because people don't realize in the United States, the leading cause of death is poor nutrition. People are not eating healthy foods. And part of that is the food companies that are promoting unhealthy food products instead of doing things which encourage more healthy eating in our country. So if we can focus more, even eating healthy food, and Ocean Robbins, my friend who does the Food Revolution, has tremendous information on food as powerful medicine, food to help us be healthy and get healthy. Even if you're sick, you might be able to treat your illness with eating better quality food and with exercising. So when we go upstream like that, we can reduce the costs of medical care.
Well, so let's just talk about the health of our body politic. We are facing a pandemic of corruption. Mm-hmm. As corporations and dark money buy influence over elected officials, over our regulators responsible for enforcing the laws, and even over the judicial appointments and prosecutors who are supposed to safeguard the public interest. Eleanor, you and I, we both had the opportunity to participate in the 2019 UNRIG Summit, which focused on initiatives and campaigns at the local and state levels to counter and gerrymandering, voter suppression, purging and disenfranchisement, the corporate and dark money in politics, the vulnerable voting machines, as well as the anachronistic electoral college system. So what do you have in this toolbox that you're developing for us to answer these major fundamental issues? I remember, I think someone at the conference said that this is the #1 issue to solve, because without it, you can't solve the others.
Right, excellent question. And that is so true. The fact that wealthy individuals and corporations have so much influence on our government is affecting every issue in our country. It's affecting our healthcare situation. It's leading to the blockage and addressing the climate crisis as the fossil fuel companies try to block climate action. So it's really the issue underlying every other issue is this influence of big money on our politics. So I'm delighted that the Unrig the System people had that wonderful conference. By the way, Noelle and Bob were there also. And they're having another one virtually coming up. I believe it's September 22nd. So people can tune in to Unrig the System this weekend. But essentially, we need to deal with this by recognizing that part of why big money has so much influence is that so many citizens have stepped away from politics. So in 2016, for example, you know, we think, oh, well, half the people, well, just say what the reality is. About 25% of the people voted for Donald Trump for president. About 25% plus 3 million voted for Hillary Clinton. But about half the eligible citizens who could have voted did not vote at all in 2016. So that's a huge number of people in our country that have just kind of stepped away. And I think if you look at why don't more people vote, a big reason that they really kind of come down to that people feel, oh, my vote doesn't matter. But the reality is your vote matters a great deal. I could tell you campaign after campaign where it was one vote a precinct, which could turn an election. John F. Kennedy getting elected president, you know, very small margins. So in some of the key states for Obama in 2008, one vote a precinct. So your vote matters a great deal. There's a woman, by the way, Shelley Simons, who ran for state representative in Virginia. She literally lost, she tied for that seat against a Republican incumbent, and they had to draw a name out of the hat. If she had had just one more vote, she would have won that seat. And when they drew it out of the hat, the Republican won, and the fact that that Republican won meant that the Republicans had a majority in the House at the state representatives in Virginia. And that completely changed the agenda of the legislature and what was voted on and what was passed. And it all because of one vote. So there's example after example of that. So I really encourage people, you know, your vote matters, and make sure you vote and vote early. Make sure anybody you know votes. Get people, you know, go early to the polls or get your vote by mail early. If you mail it early enough, it'll get there even through the laggard post office we have now. So I would say that's number one, that we, the people, need to step up. And when we step back, that creates a vacuum that enables the wealthy people to do all their mischief. I also, you mentioned dark money, which is kind of the side money that's not even known. Where is all this money coming from? It's not money directly to candidates. It's side money through super PACs and so forth. there's a great book written explaining all that, Dark Money, by my classmate at Yale, was Jane Mayer. So that's really a great book to read to find out more about that. And there's another great book, similar line, called Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean. And what Nancy MacLean talks about is not only do the wealthy people give money to candidates to run and do the super PACs, but they have been working systematically for years to change the rules in our government so that the wealthy elites can keep their control. And that includes things like suppressing the vote and dropping people off the voting rolls, make it harder for people to vote, require a government-issued photo ID. I mean, there's a whole range of ways that they have tried to suppress the vote. That includes gerrymandering, where they draw the lines to favor the Republican candidates, that kind of thing. So we need to be aware that that's happening. And by the way, coming down the pike on that would be, if there's enough states that vote for it, they could call a state-initiated constitutional convention where they can rewrite the Constitution. And once that's convened, they can make any changes they want. It's never been done before. The changes to our Constitution have always been initiated through the Congress. So, and they were very focused, like giving women the right to vote or that kind of thing. But with a constitutional convention initiated by the states, that would open up the whole Constitution to a rewrite. This is a serious threat, and we need to stop it at the state level. Common Cause has done fantastic work exposing that, because some of the right-wingers, by the way, have already convened a practice session, if they succeed in getting a constitutional convention, how they would operate, what rules they would use, and what changes they would make in our Constitution. So I would, keep an eye on that one. But the immediate thing right now is this election, November 3rd, is probably the most important election in the history of the country. Because if Donald Trump gets back in for another 4 years, who knows what's going to happen to our country, our world, our democracy from that. So it's very, very important that people vote November 3rd, get other people to vote. And I have a whole other webinar on that, by the way, on what can I do? And it's going to be on my website starting later this week, eleanorlecain.org. You'll be able to access that webinar. And it lays out, even if you live in a very blue or a very red state, or a very Republican, a very Democratic state, you can still help. And it lays out exactly in more detail how you can do that. Okay. And Noelle just put up the website. Thank you, Noelle, in the chat.
Well, we're facing an unprecedented economic downturn crisis due to tens of millions of people being thrown out of their jobs and their work, applying for unemployment benefits. I don't know if this is beyond the Great Depression, but we had, as an economy, had not really emerged from the 2008. The good jobs went away. The jobs that were being created were lower wage with no benefits. So we were a little bit on the ropes with, in terms of the economy, even before this economic downturn and crisis. So what we've been talking about is there's been some corruption entered into our economic model, where instead of just competing on the basis of who makes the better product and price point, it's like competing by who can, control the democracy, elected officials, capture the regulatory agencies. So let's talk a little bit about corporate reform here. So what we have is private and limited liability stockholder corporations. Well, what's with this limited liability part of it? What we've created is an unaccountable, non-transparent corporate organizational structure. So how can the rules for this structure be changed and introduce reforms like a corporation is not a person. We can have profit sharing and cooperative ownership within these corporations. Full workers' collective representation, and just by way of reference, the workers in Sweden, 90% do belong to collective and workers' unions. And then how can we ensure full accountability for the damages, which in economic terms has this, very vague term called externalities.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, you're right on beam with the central issue of our time is what's happening in our economy now. And it's so true that the challenges that we had in the 2008 Great Recession, most people did not recover from that. And if you actually look at the data, that since 2008, virtually all of the money that came from the revived economy has gone to the top 10%, even most of that to the top 1%. So a lot of people had collectively lost hundreds of billions of dollars in value if people lost homes or lost jobs. And a lot of those people never could get jobs back, or certainly not at the level that they had when they were working then. So the 2008 recession really intensified what has been a trend since the 1970s, which is a trend towards greater concentration of wealth at the top and greater diminishment of resources below. So we're now in a situation where the top 1% of our people own more wealth than 90% of the rest of us. That concentration of wealth is so intense at the top that 1% owns more than 90% of the rest of us. So that's not a healthy situation, I don't think, for anybody. And I think it was you who told me the Dalai Lama was talking about what you need to be content in a society. And when there's less of a gap between the very rich and the poor, then more people are more content in places like Denmark. But this is where we're at in the United States right now. And that rate of concentration of wealth has accelerated. And during this pandemic, when so many people, as you mentioned, millions of people lost jobs. And I think it's worse than the Great Depression in the sense that the Great Depression happened over a number of years. It wasn't kind of overnight. But with the COVID, we're now having millions of people unemployed, within a matter of months, huge numbers of people unemployed. So it's a very serious challenge. So, what do we do about this, as you rightly ask? I would say one thing we need to do is reduce that concentration of wealth and spread the wealth around more so that more people have greater economic security. And just as a practical matter, more people will then have money to buy things. I mean, Jeff Bezos has whatever it is now, $130 billion personally. What's he going to do with all that? It would be better to spread that money out among more people so they can buy cars or, feed their families or whatever it is they need to sustain themselves. It's healthier for an economy to have that wealth more spread. And the best way of doing that is through taxes. And I know taxes is an issue that makes most people's eyes glaze over. And I have to confess, I actually love taxes. I mean, I love studying them and learning them. We need to understand taxes because this is how the rich control us, and the corporation is through the taxes. So I'm not going to go too deep here. I'm actually writing a book on creating an America that works for everyone. And I have a whole chapter called 12 Steps for Prosperity for All, and it kind of lays it out there. But the main thing we all need to know is that since the 1950s, basically the tax burden has been shifted away from wealthy individuals and corporations and put onto the backs of working people. And I could give you instance after instance. And as recent as 2017, when Trump first became president and the Republicans passed this so-called tax cut bill, it was a tax cut bonanza for the very wealthy. It's like 83 cents of every dollar cut went to the top 1%. So that was just in 2017, and that's part of what's accelerating it. So what do we do about that? We need to elect people or demand from our elected officials that they reverse that trend, that they have restore fair taxation to the very wealthy individuals and corporations. And when we do that, that's going to help spread the wealth around more. And one of the biggest ways just within that would be the estate taxes. When someone dies right now, if you have $11.5 million, you don't pay anything in the estate taxes. So that, you know, we should restore it back to what it was not that long ago. And I know, you know, a number of people believe, Andrew Carnegie believed in 100% estate tax. So whatever you had left at the end of your life would go back to the kitty, help the whole country, build roads, improve our schools, strengthen the country. I don't believe in 100% estate tax, but I do think it should be a lot more than it is now. So that is the fastest way we can deal with this problem of concentrated wealth. And also, you know, just to touch briefly, and we could talk all night just about these, but we need unions to protect working people. And there's a big assault to wipe out unions because they represent workers and they get better wages and benefits and working conditions. So the companies don't like that. But we need the unions, and we need to be passing legislation that strengthens unions. We need to enforce antitrust. So these, you know, an anti-monopoly control that happens with, you know, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and all the rest of them. So those are some of the steps that we can take. We can deal with it, but we must deal with it head on, and we have to elect people who will take this on.
One of our crises is in the environment, in the very rapid degradation of our ecosystems, the assaults. So I'd like to ask a question of how do we get enforceable environmental and social legal protections and codes of conduct that ensure the rights of people, communities, and Earth's living systems. And I think, you know, as possibly David Korten said, that, you know, the human society is a totally owned subsidiary of the Earth's ecosystems and not the other, not the other way around. So if you trace, you know, back to the cause, a lot of the degradation, the pollution are by extractive industries, certain industries for farm animal, factory farming. And so one recommendation has been for true sustainability to have a true cost accounting and internalizing all of these costs, including the disposal of waste. And so instead of having a one-way, you make something, you use the inputs, it goes through the consumer and then ends up in landfills. So there is terms called, and design innovators who are working on something called the circular economy and zero waste concepts in materials industries and in product corporations. So could you comment?
Yes, you're right on beam as usual, Laurie. You're exactly right. And we are heading towards an ecological catastrophe at the moment. And the climate crisis is a big part of that, with the greenhouse gases being emitted, particularly from the fossil fuel emissions, the coal, gas, and oil that we burn. But that's not the only one. That's joining up with our basic assault on our ecological systems that's been going on pretty much since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So, you know, we loved a lot of what it brought to us. We loved the steam engines that brought us across the country. We loved the cars that we could drive. We loved the planes we could fly in. So, you know, we give thanks for what advances have come to us through these fossil fuels, but it's absolutely time to get a grip and to live within, live in harmony with nature. And I would say underlying everything that we're talking about is this basic principle that we, each of us individually and all of us collectively, need to respect each other and respect Mother Earth. And if we did that, that would transform our lives and our country and our world. So we absolutely need to do that. And I love your suggestions there about having the true cost accounting would go a long way, because people are assuming the extraction of wealth from the earth, and then the pollution and the waste that's generated is not in the equation economically, and it needs to be in there. So let's say what the true cost of creating paper, for example, that we're wiping out all these trees, which are the, you know, help to clean the air. The trees are the lungs of the planet, and where the air gets cleaned out. When we cut down or burn those trees, then we lose that ability to clean our air, and which we're feeling really now with all this burning going on the West Coast. But if we had true cost accounting, you would see more the cost of that extraction and the cost of the pollution on the other end that would be built in to buying your product. So I think that's a great way to go. And zero waste, by the way. I think in 1990, I think I wrote the first speech ever given by an elected official calling for zero waste. It was for Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Murphy, who was the acting governor of Massachusetts at the time, and I was her top policy advisor. And I said, we have to go to zero waste. And it's a good thing. It basically means one company's waste becomes another company's food or sourcing of material. And you can just place plants where, you know, whatever your waste is for this company could be placed next to a company that needs that for their production. So we definitely want to move in that direction as rapidly as possible. And I would say of all the ecological challenges, the climate crisis is the most severe. And we're watching the consequences now with these fires and floods and hurricanes, greater frequency, greater intensity. If we don't address the greenhouse gas emission thing causing the climate crisis, you know, we could literally like burn up the planet and cause catastrophic ecological changes that we cannot reverse. So I would say we need to cut our greenhouse gas emissions by 60% in the next 10 years. And we can do it. We can do it. You know, one thing to realize is we need to move towards a whole clean green economy. And we can do that by transitioning out of the fossil fuels and into renewable energy like solar and wind. And the thing to know, those prices for solar and wind are now less than all the fossil fuels and nuclear generated electricity. So we're already won on the price. The only reason these fossil fuel things keep going and the burning of the coal is because the taxpayers are subsidizing it. We have to 100% stop the subsidies to fossil fuels. Just stop it. And we should ban any future fossil fuel projects, and that includes, you know, the drilling and the mining. Just stop it. We need to now shift dramatically into renewables. And the last thing on this that's going to make it so wonderful is energy efficiency. That right now we have huge waste in our energy system. So we got leaky windows in our homes. We get cars with low gas mileage. We can, through energy efficiency, we could cut our energy use in half. just through greater efficiency. So I'm from New England. I love to cut waste. So we really need to get on it. And as we do this transition to renewable energies and with greater energy efficiency, we're going to create millions of new jobs. And it's going to be the greatest job creation and greatest business opportunity creation in the history of humanity. So I'm actually very excited about the possibilities of doing it. And of course, we need to make sure those jobs are union jobs, that people of color have access to them, and low-income communities have access to those jobs. And then we have a just transition for people out of the fossil fuel industries to use their skills for the new clean, green economy.
Well, 350.org in its Do the Math campaign said the world set the maximum temperature rise to be 2 degrees Celsius, or risking catastrophic consequences. It calculated that's only 565 more tons of carbon dioxide. However, the fossil fuel companies have in their reserves 5 times that amount. So it's exactly what you're saying, that fuel has to be kept in the ground. And on the good news front, I recently watched at the DC Environmental Film Festival a few years back a film called Carbon Nation. And a young man went around the country saying there is American ingenuity out there, and showcased, many of these solutions of efficiency. And he added it all up at the end. If this solution was scaled up, we could, tackle this issue.
Right. No, exactly. Well, and not to go too techie here, but just to be clear on how much opportunity there is in that the carbon emissions are the most serious and largest of the greenhouse gas emission. So we need to reduce our carbon emission. Carbons get emitted in several major ways. One is by electricity generation, another is in buildings, and another is through vehicles. So you go through each one of those. We could cut the carbon and electricity, as I just mentioned. We could have all our electricity generated by solar and wind, and it would be less expensive. So we can take care of the carbon emissions through in the electricity generation. In the buildings, we can have tremendously stronger efficiency, build green buildings, cut carbon emissions there. And in the vehicles, we can make sure that we have greater miles per gallon in the cars that are driven, or shift to electric vehicles totally. And we can expand on public transit. Right now, only 2% of transportation is through public transit. So we can modernize and expand our public transit system so people don't feel dependent on driving cars, and expanding pathways for bikes and pedestrians, and make more livable, walkable, bikeable living environments. So we can absolutely do this. And I think we're going to have a higher quality of life when we do. The thing we have to do is get rid of the fossil fuel industry to reduce their power, because they're the main block right now with climate deniers. And we have to elect Joe Biden over Donald Trump, who is like the chief climate denier in chief up there. Which Biden, I don't know if you saw that yesterday, Biden called Trump a climate arsonist because he's denying the climate problem and saying that's not the reason for the fires out west. So we can absolutely do this. We know what to do, but it's going to take people demanding that our elected officials do it. Voting is where it starts. It's not where it ends. We need to be on our state and federal official to demand that they take strong, bold action for a clean, green economy. And that's both the renewable energy sourcing and it's the energy efficiency. And just be relentless like a dog on a bone tell them how important this is to you and to the future of the country, and work for candidates who are strong on it. And if they're not strong on it, then vote them out.
Okay. So we're experiencing a massive level of division and polarization in the country, in the US, across all different kinds of schisms. I'd like to just kind of bring into our conversation the soft skills of human relationship, to bring in how we communicate with each other. You did share with me that one of the principles that you're going to share in your new book is that of respect. So learning respectful communication, nonviolent communication, civilized assertiveness, emotional intelligence. You know, we have Daniel Goleman to thank for his whole series on emotional intelligence, being a little bit science-based, brain-based, you know, but this is also where our different faith traditions come in, whether it's, you know, witnessing our reactions, to control our strong negative emotional reactions, and to not resort to violence, to resort to dialogue, conflict resolution, to not depersonalize, counter us versus them thinking, and to start young with our children and teach these skills of relationship, empathy, emotional intelligence, self-mastery to our children. So what would be your comment to all of that?
Yeah, I think you're so right on. The importance of these so-called soft skills are essential. And you, Laurie, have done this work in your life, as you know, in Africa and elsewhere, you know, bringing people together to address the challenges that they have in their communities, particularly around the food issue, but also other things. And that's what we need in this country, is for people to come together, because none of these policies that I'm talking about are going to happen on their own. These policies will happen when people come together and work together and demand it of their elected officials. And this level of communication is vital. The problem we have right now is our president is the main source of divisiveness, and he's trying to do a divide and conquer thing and throw red meat to his base. And you know, we need someone at that level to bring the country together, particularly now with the COVID and with all these challenges. We need to be working together. We have so much ingenuity in the United States. You know, that's the whole, I spent 20 years going around looking for the breakthrough solutions in different areas, and I was just amazed at the wonderful ingenuity in the American people. We can solve virtually every problem we have, but we're not going to solve them unless we come together and elect more enlightened leadership and work together, shoulder to shoulder, to make the changes that are needed. If we do that, we can solve every problem there is. If we don't do that, it's not looking like a happy future.
What I would like to just leave with people, or to, is when I landed here in Asheville 3 years ago now, I immediately learned about a very powerful movement that has sprung up based on the need to counter a type of a rogue, you know, corporate overreach in terms of these corporate raiders who come into communities and whatever their manufacturing processes, let's just say fracking, animal farming, factory farming, is going to 100% cause damage to the community, to the aquifers. And this group of law students in Pennsylvania helped teach these communities to represent themselves. And they've evolved a modality to say, why is it that the legal environment that we live and swim in, you know, like we're fish and we can't see it, is rigged, has been systematically, with this precedent, with that action, with, you know, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce enacting the Pell Memo to appoint activist right-wing judges on the court system. So let me just mention this group, CELDF, Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. And when they said, you know, basically they said the system is broken, and they had to do a self-study going back to English common law saying, when did it get broken, where and when, you know? Yeah, so it's Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, CELDF, C-E-L-D-F. So I got drawn into something called a democracy school that kind of re-taught history, actually. Well, their solution was to create something called the Community Bill of Rights. And so a community that's facing an assault, that's facing a corporate raider, would enact a Community Bill of Rights. And communities have all kinds of preemptions in terms of, this is a state affair, this is a national affair. You communities can't have any say in this. So what they do is a community gets sued, but the heroes, the legal eagles, they come in and defend this community with what? They defend it with the original principles that our country was built on for our self-governance is throughout our early, our Declaration of Independence and all of our early foundation of this country. So this is one modality that I thought was the most strategic, and there's over 180 communities with a Community Bill of Rights now today. And along those lines, they also said when you had English common law, it meant the land that's all around us, the environment, the ecosystems are reduced to property. And so the sale of deed means you bought that, therefore you can destroy it with no protections for nature. So they also have created a movement for declaring rights for nature. So I just wanted to see, because I know you are a lawyer as well, what your response is to this initiative.
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with that. I look forward to learning more about it. I am familiar with the movement to put into law the rights of nature, and that's Constitution Ecuador has included language on the rights of nature. So I think that's a helpful trend. Part of the challenge we have right now in terms of legal remedies is the disrespect for the rule of law and the packing of the courts with right-wing ideologues who aren't necessarily fair-minded. So that's why, in addition to getting Trump out of the White House, we need to get Democrats as a majority in the U.S. Senate so we can stop the appointment of these right-wing ideologues to both the Supreme Court and the federal judicial system generally. So I would say, I know we're kind of moving towards a close here, that the main thing to keep in mind for everybody is that we can solve every one of our problems, that we have solutions to all our major crises and our minor ones too. The key is to have each of us do whatever we can do and step up our own leadership. Because I believe that you were born for this time, and that you being here is you're here to help make this shift now for the United States and for humanity. And none of us can do it alone, but all of us need to be connecting with groups, whether it's the communities you're talking about, or one of the groups I like is indivisible.org. They're organized in every congressional district around the country to hold elected officials accountable at the federal level and increasingly at the state level too. So indivisible.org is a great group, but get together with some group and exercise your voice. Speak out, talk to your families, your friends, write letters to the editor on issues that you care about, on the election, and post on social media. It's a very important battleground. I mean, David Plouffe, who is Obama's campaign manager in 2008 and 2012, wrote a whole book on what we can do about this election. And that was his main message, is the battlefield is largely going to be on social media. So be the truth brigade and tell the truth about what's going on. So there's lots of things that each of us can do. And particular shout out to the women, that this is really a time for women to step forward and greater leadership in our families, in our communities, and our country, and have confidence in your own values and what you see happening and what you believe, and speak out. We need your voice now more than ever. And it's all of us, it's up to all of us to make this really a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and we can do it.
If I can chime in, with Earth Day and all of the activists that were speaking there was a kind of a common theme that I'd like to echo, which was, we're not going back to the old system. If structures, if systems, are falling apart, they were based on values of separation and values of us versus them. And so these people were saying, we're going to move forward based on a new set of values of unity, of cooperation, of we're all one, we're one humanity. So with all of this dissolution and within people's lives having foundations just pulled out from underneath them, really saying, looking for those paradigm shifting solutions. And so I just really want to honor you and thank you for being a pioneer in that space, doing your work for 20 years, searching for the solutions, and that both in our church communities and our friends communities, this is the place to really start to have this level of conversations. When people said, what have you been doing since you pivoted from the international development field? I said, well, I've been thinking. It's like there's think tanks in Washington D.C. and it's like, okay, everyone, you are now your own think tank. So
that's great.
So draw on some of the suggestions here, and other people who have paved the way, and especially in transforming our economic system.
Well, thank you. Laurie, thank you for doing all the research you have over the years. And Eleanor, I think she said you've been doing this 20 years, but I think it's quite a bit longer than that. Let's multiply that by a couple.
But
longer than I like to admit.
The 20 years was just for the research for her book that she mentioned.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, hopefully I'll get this forthcoming book done a lot faster than that.
Oh, I remember that last one with the introduction. Okay, we have Olivia would like to say something. Welcome, Olivia.
Say I'm so appreciative to both of you. I'm learning as fast as I can and trying to reach as many people. I wondered how I could get your book, Eleanor. I've been trying to get your Breakthrough Solutions book.
Oh,
Find it anywhere.
yes.
I borrowed somebody's to look at when I was over to their house for dinner, but I couldn't take it. I haven't been able to.
Isn't your purse big enough? Yes,
Oh, thank you.
Tell us about how they can listen to your podcast and everyone.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that. So my Breakthrough Solutions book with the introduction there by the Dalai Lama, I have a few copies left of it. So I don't have enough that I haven't put it up on Amazon, but if you send me an email at emlecain@gmail, I can send you the link for how to do it. And also, that's EM.LeCain, EMLECAIN.
Don't worry about it. I'll get you connected.
Yeah, get us connected.
Well,
and I have a new website that Dr. Kim, who's on the line with us, is helping me put together. That should be operative by the end of this week. And that's going to be eleanorlecain.org. So it's hopefully we'll have the book available there. And yes, Noelle, I do have a weekly podcast focused on solutions, and it's every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. on the worldwide on the internet. It's www.prn.fm. It's not a .org or .com. It's for Progressive Radio Network.fm. So, and I've got an archives there with just amazing people, some of the most creative people doing some of the best work. So it's all solution oriented. So you can browse through there and be re-inspired by the great American ingenuity.
Thank you. Well,
Absolutely. That's being actively suppressed, oppressed, or totally ignored. We have it here, you know, we're fabulously creative. And I don't know if anyone else would like to make a brief comment before we go to Eleanor LeCain's interview of Marianne Williamson that was done during World Unity Week. I think that was the end of June that we did that. So we know how to, okay. And also Olivia is very active in a piece, Sunray Meditation Group that is a very active peace group with Indigenous elders from around the world.
I have met with Dahani Oahu right there in Vermont. I was very good friends with her cousin, who was a Native American medicine man. He was like my best friend in Boston. And Dahani Oahu, everybody should know, wrote one of the most important books out there called Voices of Our Ancestors, where he takes 10,000 years of Cherokee wisdom, which had been passed down only verbally until this generation, and they felt humanity was reaching such a crisis point that they needed to record it for all of the people to know. And Dahani Oahu is the one who was chosen as the scribe for 10,000 years of Cherokee wisdom. And her book, where she wrote it down, is called Voices of Our Ancestors. Fabulous.
I can have, Noelle, would you put that up on the chat if I can write it in? And who was her cousin, Eleanor? I'm going to see Venerable on Friday.
Yeah, she probably won't remember me, but his name was Red Eagle. And he brought me up, Red Eagle brought me up to Vermont to meet Dahani Oahu.
I can't wait to tell her that. She'll be so wonderfully excited about that.
If you say that, she might remember.
I will do that. Thank you so much. Oh, mwah. Thank you.
Sure, good luck.
I don't even know why I said that, but I was told to say something. So now,
synchronicity. I'm going to do it.
And Dr. Kim would like to say something.
Eleanor, I just want to address you directly and thank you all for convening us. I'm really grateful. I'm a leadership and ethics professor at the State University of New York. And what I want you to know, Eleanor, is that you model what I teach my students. You lead with your heart, you nurture and care about the human spirit. You give your best time and time again. You grapple with ethical dilemmas and choose wisely. And you delight people. We just all lit up. I have tears rolling down my face. I delighted listening to you today, and I know all the people who are here and who will listen to the recording just delight in your presence. And I want to thank you for serving our country so well for decades. You've often been behind the scenes and doing a lot of work for others who are front and center stage. And as I've been telling you recently, now is the time for you to be center stage. And I'm so delighted, and we look forward to your new book, and it's going to make such a difference in the world just as you do. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kim. I so appreciate that heartfelt embracement, and back at you. And the new book Kim mentioned is called Creating an America That Works for Everyone. And Kim also has a book coming out called The Soul of America Speaks, which is so beautifully written. And I encourage everybody to get that.
Blessings, everyone.
Thank you, Dr.
Joy
Kim.
to be with you.
Pamela, did you want to say something before we close?
No, actually, I just met Eleanor. Kim and I have known each other for a while, but she seems like a remarkable woman, and I look forward to getting to know her better.
Fabulous. Well,
thank you.
Soon that website will be live. I want to thank Laurie for all the preparation she did. Indeed. All the study you've done over the years. She is a deep well of information and experience. And she's hosted this Peace Hour 7 days in a row. So she's done an amazing job. We're very thankful for that, for your contribution, Laurie. And as always, this has been, it's been a fabulous hour.
I think that that's real invitation that you gave us at the end, Laurie, for all of us to be our own think tank. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.